Good morning, Bitcoins. We're live on the World Crypto Network with Stephen Macaskill, CEO of Amagi Metals. I said it wrong. Here's Stephen. How's it going, Stephen?
Hey, how's it going? It's going very well, and I'm really excited to be on your show.
It's very good. So let's just talk about the Amagi metal. I'm going to say it wrong every time. Amagi Metals website, and just walk people through how you can do it, what you can do at the website, and what it's all about.
Yeah, actually, so this website that you're looking at has a life expectancy of something like 4 more days, and we're getting a completely new one. And the new website is going to have market alerts so that people can get an alert if the price of gold or the price of Bitcoin or silver or platinum go up or down or over a certain amount. And people can either receive text messages or emails when the certain price level gets hit. And on top of that, all of our products will be priced in Bitcoin, so people can view products in dollars or Bitcoins or Euro or many of the other major currencies around the world. In addition, it will have a new section called Free Market News. And it's not market news that's free, it's free market news, so news from a free market perspective. And that's going to be a lot more prevalent to provide a lot of new content to our customers from a free market perspective.
That's very cool, and it's great they'll be able to track the price and have alerts. So I
Oh,
noticed
yeah.
you have different kinds of 1 ounce silver bars. What's the difference between these silver bars? They all weigh 1 ounce, right?
Yeah, essentially each one comes from a different mint. So the different mints have different costs because they have different sizes, or the mints have different sizes. So their costs are different. So when we sell them, you can see like a 1 ounce or 10 ounce bar may have a different price, off by a few dollars or a few cents, and that's because of the costs that we have from the mint from their production. Some of them are IRA certified, so you can put them in a self-directed IRA account. And to do so, that mint needs to be certified with the IRS to be IRA certified. And so usually those products are a little bit more pricey. But of course, we're talking about less than 1% change in the price. But yeah, so it just comes from different private mints from around the world.
So there are different levels to silver. The IRA ones would probably be more secure or more standard. These other ones are just other mints, but they're all trustworthy mints, right? You don't think anyone's putting some kind of fake metal in the middle of the bar or something like that because they just have different logos on the fronts, right?
Yeah, yeah. All the mints that we work with, we test all the products that come in, and to make sure that they're legitimate. And yeah, we make sure to stick with the mints that keep their promise with their products. There is one mint that we have stopped working with, and that's Northwestern Territorial Mint. And part of the reason why is they have very long delays, terrible customer service, and I think part of the reason why is their largest customer is the United States government, the Department of Defense. They supply all the precious and base metals for the DoD. And so since the government is their largest customer, they, I think, neglect or have very poor customer service to their private customers.
So basically, no matter which one of these rounds I get, whether it has a pot leaf or end the Fed or just a U.S. coin on the front, they're all the same silver. Because I just know that there's different prices, and I don't know. I guess when you're out there negotiating in the real world, and you've got pot leaf rounds, you're going to trade those equally for Statue of a Pretty Woman rounds or maple leaf Canadian rounds. They're all the same, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing I usually say. Silver is silver is silver. So if you're buying an ounce of silver, you're buying an ounce of silver. If you want to give it away as a gift, then something, with a nice design that has a little bit more of a premium might be worth getting. But if you're buying it as a hedge against inflation, it doesn't really matter. So you want to look for the best bet. There are a few other factors to take into account. Like if you plan on taking the silver out of the country or the gold, then and you want to sell it somewhere else, then of course you want to take something that's recognizable around the world. So you'd want to take more of a world coin, such as a gold Kruger Rand or silver eagle or silver maple, as opposed to a generic silver bar around.
That's probably a better idea than getting the SpongeBob SquarePants rounds. Those are
Yeah,
probably less tradable overseas.
yeah, those ones would be good for gifts, I'd say.
So just let's talk about precious metals basically. Why would you suggest people get into precious metals? What are the advantages versus stocks or cash or savings accounts, maybe bonds, something like that?
Yeah, so some of those things you mentioned I consider investments. And for gold and silver, I wouldn't really consider it an investment in a traditional sense, where you buy it, you wait for the price to go up, and then you sell it. For gold and silver, it's more of a savings account, where you buy it, you hold it in the hopes that you never have to spend it. It's basically the foundation for your investment. So you're not going to make money off of gold or silver. What happens with the price going up is really the dollar devaluing. So it's just a way to preserve your wealth, so that in the future you have the same amount of wealth. Of course, if you put $100 in the bank with fiat currency, in a year from now, that $100 is worth a lot less, or 3% less. After 10 years, that's worth a lot less. So it's a great way to preserve your wealth, and unlike cryptocurrency, it has a track record. So people still view it as a storage of wealth for long term. So I usually say that should be your base. You create a base for yourself with precious metals, and from there, that's when you start investing in equities and whatever you want, whether it's real estate, stocks, or bonds. As long as you have a good base with gold and silver, you should be good.
That's a really good suggestion. Of course, one that I didn't take when I started off working because gold was around $300 an ounce back then. And yeah, I could have put some nice money away and even actually made a profit, given those prices and these prices now. But we didn't know that then. And it seemed harder and more confusing to buy gold back then. There wasn't the gold ETF where you could buy it like a stock, or at least I didn't know about the gold ETF where you could buy it like a stock. I know about it now. Is there a silver ETF? Just out of
Oh,
curiosity.
SLV. There are lots of them. So
Very cool, very cool. So that's an option as well, and they're trying to do that now with the Bitcoin. I know the Winklevoss twins and another group, Second Market, were both trying to create Bitcoin ETFs. You could just buy them like stock on the market. But what about for silver and gold for storage at home? How do you suggest that people store their silver and gold? Should they get a safe deposit box or hide it under the bed? What are the general suggestions for storing the stuff?
yeah, so I mean, it really depends on how much you have, I would say, and what you're comfortable with. And I mean, there are people who hide them in their backyard and dig holes. There are people who have books all around the house with gold coins hidden in them, and it's funny because you hear these stories of these people who die from old age, and the children go into the house and they just open up books and gold coins are falling out of all of them. But I would say if it's a large amounts, something like $50,000 or more, you may be interested in investing in a safe. And the other thing is to not tell anyone that you have that safe or that gold and silver. That's the best thing to do is by not telling anyone that you have it, you're less likely at risk of getting robbed. I don't really recommend external storage facilities. just because you don't own it, you do own it, but you don't have it in your possession. That's one of the benefits that I like about having gold, is that it's in your possession. So safety deposit boxes, same thing. I mean, if you want, or if you're comfortable with putting in a safety deposit box, that works. Less people know that you have it there. I mean, the bank, in theory, shouldn't know what you have in your safety deposit box, so there's always that option. But again, in the past, the government has been able to go through safety deposit boxes and has confiscated gold and silver in the past.
They've even had all the people turn in all their personal gold and silver. They had that law after the 30s where they collected all of it personally, like door to door, like the people talk about with the guns. They've actually done with the precious metals, the gold and the silver, for very questionable reasons at the time that don't seem to make any sense now. But it's just a historical footnote now. So,
Yeah.
but that's some interesting points, and it sounds a lot when you talk about gold or silver like you're talking about bitcoins. I know with a paper Bitcoin, you can print it out, you can store it in a safe deposit box, you can put it under your bed, you can get a floor safe, or especially a fire safe, a fireproof safe would be good for protecting your Bitcoin keys. How do you think gold is similar to Bitcoin, and how do you think it's different?
Yeah, I think, I mean, gold, and I consider Bitcoin almost like digital gold. Uh, I mean, they have a finite supply. They have their own uses in their own ways. They are, well, up until, Bitcoin, highly divisible, but I'd say Bitcoin's easily more divisible. I think that the strengths that Bitcoin has are the weaknesses that gold has, and the strengths that gold has are the weaknesses of Bitcoin. For example, talking about storage, if you're amassing a large amount of gold or silver and you have to travel with that, it's such a hassle. We go to coin shows all over the country, and carting around 100 pounds of silver and gold is not an easy task.
It's not like comic books or anything else where it's a much lighter project. You're the amount of weight that you're bringing with you is the amount of money you're bringing to sell. Like you have to have that product there to sell. That's a
yeah, and the TSA hassles you, and they're saying, oh, you're bringing more than $10,000 on the plane, and all that stuff. So that's obviously a weakness of precious metals that Bitcoin can defeat. But gold and silver, I think, are for right now more universally known, and people, a lot more people, a lot more dealers are willing to accept it or buy and sell gold in other countries, whereas right now exchanges are just popping up. People are just starting to learn what Bitcoin is. But yeah, so traveling with gold can be a pain, whereas Bitcoin, it's pretty easy. But gold does have that track record that Bitcoin does not. I think that they're almost complementary, where one is in the digital world and the other one is in the physical world, but they both provide value. They both have their purposes.
You did mention that Bitcoin is more divisible than gold. We have seen things like this. I'm going to pronounce it wrong again, but it's a Valcambi Suisse fine gold bar, and the gold bar has been broken up into little squares with the idea that you could trade the squares to other people for less than the entire amount of the gold bar. I think this is a good metaphor for Bitcoin, that Bitcoin can be broken up into these squares, but they're just digital squares, much easier to keep track of than this gold bar.
Yeah.
Would you suggest people buy gold bars like this and try to trade them around, or should they move into Bitcoin? What do you think?
I would say a mixture of both. I went to a Bitcoin Society meetup on Monday and was asked this question: Is gold a better buy, or is Bitcoin? And I would use it kind of like the way my philosophy I said earlier, whereas you buy gold as your base, and then in the hopes that you never have to use it in the future, and then of course you start converting your wealth to cryptocurrency. obviously think that that's the future.
It does seem to be. And how can people buy gold and silver on your website? Do you guys use BitPay or Coinbase, or do you have a third-party shopping cart? What kind of system?
Yeah, we use BitPay, and we've been using BitPay since the beginning, since we first started accepting Bitcoin, and they had a lot higher fees than they do now. Now it's just X dollar, a fixed amount a month rather than a variable rate. So.
So you're happy with BitPay. How does it compare to credit cards? Do you also take credit cards for gold and silver?
Yeah, so we've had to divide our prices on our website between credit cards and check, money order, bank wire, and cryptocurrency. And so cryptocurrency, we charge at the cash price, or the check or bank wire price, and then of course credit card is something like 3%. And that way people can save, especially when they're buying something like gold. I don't think you should pay additional transaction fees to buy or exchange for another form of money. So it's really great how Bitcoin works, and with these low transaction fees, I think it's really going to produce wealth in the future.
And especially for larger buys, someone like myself might buy $100 worth of gold, and 3% is like $3. But if you're buying $1,000, $10, or 10,000, 100,000, if you're buying significant amounts of gold, saving that 3% by going with Bitcoin instead of wire, make money order, credit card, any kind of that thing, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there really is an advantage there for people to save money when backing their money up into gold.
Oh yeah, and I've even heard Gift. They give a discount to people who purchase with Bitcoin. So
yeah, the gift system is pretty impressive. They build the points up into your account, and I can imagine people that got into Bitcoin earlier who have been making a lot of purchases on Gift, also racking up a lot of those points. So they're making money on the Bitcoin, they're making money on the points, they get all the goods, the items, Amazon, all the real world stuff. So they're just really making it out there. It's quite a good deal right now for a middleman.
it is, yeah.
And there's even apps now like the Phiva wallet, Pheeva, which works on iPhone and has a built-in connector to the gift app, so you can buy gift cards right from your Bitcoin wallet.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of my friends, they say that they go to places like Target or Whole Foods and they do their shopping, and then as they're in line waiting for the checkout, they convert some of their money from Bitcoin into a gift card, and then they spend it right there, so they don't take as much of a transaction hit. It's much more immediate, and they only spend what they need.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And actually, for the first time last week, I went to a restaurant that accepts Bitcoin. There's only a couple here in Denver, and it was just so seamless and so easy to just pay with our cell phone. As soon as we paid with our cell phone, the receipt printed, and off we went. It was amazing to be a part of that.
It is really futuristic when you get to pay in person. I know a lot of people talk about Bitcoin being the internet's money, and yes, it's better than credit cards. You don't put your identity out there. There's a lot of advantages. But actually paying in person without using your wallet, we're also used to, you pull out this old thing, you have this folded paper, all these little plastic cards. Like, that's so confusing and a pain. Like my phone, I did the app, scanned the code, put the money in, and sent. I never had to touch anything. And that's a very futuristic feeling, that no touch. Like, yeah, I've filmed it, of course, because I'm watching myself, and I scan the code, and the codes there, our two phones don't even touch. Like, the two phones are, like, apart. And yet, somehow, the money goes from one person to another, and I get to eat Indian food. Like, it's amazing. Like,
it is. So I think that it's going to replace the wallet in the next 5 years. We're mostly headed that way. But I also have another theory, and I can't really prove it myself, but if you know anything about paper money, it's the dirtiest thing that we touch. It has fecal matter on it. It's
and right before we eat our food, too.
Yeah, it touches like thousands of different hands. Pretty much something like 90% of money has drugs residue on it. So when we touch it, we absorb these the bacteria and these all these bad things that we're have to manage every day when we use cash. But with Bitcoin, we don't have to use that. So essentially, it could be possible that Bitcoin is increasing our life expectancy because we don't have to touch as many dirty things and interact with each other with this dirty stuff. So by using Bitcoin, our life expectancy might increase a little bit.
I also think it saves time. I was watching a cashier count out change for me, and it was like three $5 bills, and it just took so long to stack those bills, and I had to see him, and she had to see him. It's all a complex process. Neither of us wants to make a mistake. Both of us wants the correct amount. With Bitcoin, when I pay the exact amount. There's no change. I never even have to consider that as a possibility. And it's also really fast. We had 3 or 4 people in line with us who were also paying in Bitcoin, and it wasn't any longer than the credit cards. It was, they have to sign it. We have to do the little QRs. The kid got a little faster each time because, he was, getting familiar with his system. We were familiar with our systems. We can really get the time down, and it's easier. It's cleaner. There's no change. It's just all around better money, and it really feels like the MP3 and the CD. I remember when I got my first MP3 in 1997, my mind was completely blown. I'm going to be able to listen to all the music in the world now. This is fantastic. I can email it. I can download it. I can mix it up. I can edit it. I can use it in videos. It really opened up music for people. And, of course, the music industry saw that as a negative thing. We had this whole 15-year period of fighting back and forth over it. Now they seem to be fully on the side of the MP3. They've completely forgotten the CD, the middlemen, the warehouses, the trucks, the tower records, all the places we used to go are all gone. And now that same thing seems to be slowly happening to money. Do you think we're going to have ATMs in like 5 years, 10 years, like maybe Bitcoin ATMs?
Yeah, I mean, if we all move over to another cryptocurrency, obviously there are going to be banks in some manner, and I definitely think it's possible for people to store their Bitcoins at a bank. So maybe not an ATM where you have to go to a place and withdraw the Bitcoins. You can just do it on your cell phone. But I definitely think that there's maybe a need for that in the future.
That would make a lot more sense if something like Coinbase, I didn't want to have all of my coins with me, but I wanted to just take out, have a limit on it. You can only take out a couple $100s a day, just like an ATM. It would transfer right to my phone for my spending money, and it would also take it out of the whole idea of it being an investment. It becomes more of like cash money for spending rather than is it going up, is it going down, that kind of idea.
Yeah, yeah. So, and of course, I mean, if people still want to, they can put it in a bank to earn interest. So of course, when they withdraw it out of there, then the interest would stop. But
exactly, that would be a good reason for Coinbase to put that wall up, to have me say 200 a day, some kind of a limit, because the rest of it would be locked into an investment of someone else borrowing that Bitcoin. So.
Yeah, but of course. That would be up to somebody's risk, not. I think with Bitcoin, it's a lot easier. Once you put it in somebody else's hands for them to walk away with it. So, but I think there are a lot of solutions now with the multi-signature verification and all that kind of stuff coming down the pipelines.
There is a new website called BTC Jam where you can loan people Bitcoins. I haven't looked into how it works, but it seems basically you would loan them a Bitcoin, get a certain amount of interest back, and at the end get your Bitcoin plus the interest if they don't run off with your Bitcoin, which is the big if for me. I haven't investigated their site. Maybe they have an escrow program. Maybe they have some kind of security that would make sense to me. But otherwise, that would be the big issue. The other thing is that I kind of thought, as a matter of fact, never take a bet or take a loan in Bitcoin, because it could be very difficult to pay it back, especially when we were going from 300 to 1,500, and it was like, wow, if you'd made a bet yesterday and said, well, I'll pay it back next week, that'd be a terrible bet.
Yeah.
You're losing way more than what you lost originally. So.
Yeah, I mean, my philosophy is pretty much the same, not just for Bitcoin, but I'm pretty anti-debt in every aspect of my life. So if somebody is asking for a loan, and if it's a friend or a family member and it's not too much, then I just see it as, here's the money, and if I don't see it, I don't see it, and if I get it back, well, then yay, I get it back. But that's usually how I see that kind of thing.
So, what are your thoughts about the altcoins? Do you guys accept altcoins at Amagi Metals?
Yes, we accept Darkcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and Potcoin. And my view, as I've said before, I'm not a big fan of the people who say there must only be one blockchain. It almost reminds me of Lord of the Rings. There must only be one to rule them all. But I think that there's a need for altcoins because we're still in an exploring time. We don't really know what all the answers are. We don't know what, how much data should be stored in every transaction. That kind of stuff we're still trying to figure out. And these altcoins are giving us a lot of information, feedback, what's working that can be integrated into Bitcoin. Not only that, the different altcoins are for different niche markets, which brings more attention to cryptocurrency as a whole, which brings more attention to Bitcoin. So I definitely think there's a space for altcoins. Are there any that I'm excited about? Not really. I do like some of these concepts like Torcoin that's coming out. That one might be a really cool one. Instead of proof of work, proof of bandwidth, and give people an incentive to browse or put up relay nodes to browse anonymously. That's great. So yeah, I think that there is a place for altcoins, and I think that some people in the Bitcoin community should stop bashing them.
That Torcoin does sound like a good idea because I know they need more nodes and they don't have a good way of getting them. So if they could monetize it with a coin, I'd be all in favor of that.
Yeah, an incentive structure is all they need.
And that's part of the genius and the beauty of Bitcoin is that when we set up the internet the first time, we didn't really have this internet money to pay people for setting up cool things. Like the guy who did the Twinkie project never got a Bitcoin donation. He just did it for the good of the internet, for the good of jokes,
Yeah.
And the same thing for a lot of the other websites. They weren't necessarily profit-making websites when they came up. They were about sharing images. They were about sharing videos. They, not altruism totally, but a little bit of that, as well as just the general good of the internet. Of more sharing meant more good for everyone. And that same attitude's coming back, but with Bitcoin, we have the ability to fund things now. Shows like mine can get small donations from a lot of people and almost break even, and maybe even break even in the future. And as this tipping culture grows up, as the micropayments we've been talking about forever are finally here, and they're finally coming, and people adapt to them. We've been talking about ideas for YouTube. Maybe if you had a $10 a month subscription, and then every video that you liked on YouTube, it would add all those up at the end of the month and give each of them a percentage of your $10. Never exceeding your 10, and that that would be great for content producers, big and small. So that is all possible because of Bitcoin.
I think the implications are profound. Not only that, mesh nets, competing internets, that's now possible with these micropayments. It's so beautiful to see.
And you can definitely see it, like when you think about a Wi-Fi network all by itself, and maybe you're going to try to pay to get access to it. You're going to give them your credit card. Well, now you're giving your credit card to a random Wi-Fi node somewhere. You're pretty much giving your information away.
Yeah.
With Bitcoin, you could actually pay the random Wi-Fi node, not have them really have any of your information, not any way really to damage you, and you could use their bandwidth, for a limited time, and then pay more if you need more bandwidth. It's better money for the internet. It really is like a coin, like something you'd leave behind in a tip box, and you wouldn't worry about that tip box coming back to you and someone getting your address and buying more things on your coin. Your coin's in the tip box. It's gone. It's not like a credit card. So.
Yeah. I think that a lot of these companies like Apple, now their new operating system has a MAC address scrambler. So it's more difficult for people to find, the hardware you're working on when you can scramble your MAC address. So, and who knows how valid that is? Are they still working with the government? Probably. Apple keeps private keys and they can decrypt your phone. So, it's kind of like what actually is going on. We don't really know.
Well, and now thanks to the Snowden story and the NSA leak, that kind of like real secure hardware is coming into demand. People are seeing a reason for these things. They're starting to understand the difference between encryption that has a backdoor and real encryption, and that it's more important than just the government. I know that Brazil was very upset that the U.S. government was reading their internal communications because they were negotiating in business deals competing against U.S. companies, and now they can assume that the U.S. companies had all of their insider information, and that's
Yep.
why they beat them in the deal. And this is at a country level that they're upset about this spying. I know Germany was furious that they were getting spied on by the U.S., and these are some of our greatest allies that, again, we're still maintaining that Cold War attitude, even if we want to say it's not there. It's still very much a Cold War. So, and it's getting worse with the Putin situation. So.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed a few weeks ago that Google started to encrypt pretty much everything on all their websites. Google.com uses the HTTPS protocol. So that's encouraging, or maybe that tells me that so many users stopped using Google that they realize that they are behind the times. They need to step up their game in protecting the privacy of their customers.
It does seem very much like the tech industry was exposed. That on
Hmm.
one hand they were cooperating with the NSA, and on the other hand the NSA was screwing them over by reading all of their other data as well. So this
Yeah.
kind of idea that you could let something be unencrypted, which of course like early internet people like Stallman would have just railed against. They would just fight this idea 100% of the time. They know the difference. Stallman was of course furious about trusted hardware. He thought that was going to be a terrible idea. We're still dipping our toes into that slowly, but it's all right there. Like they were right the first time. The internet should have been built encrypted. Everything should be protected. The user's data is the most important thing, and a lot of these companies make their money by selling the user data to advertisers. So
Yeah.
it's a very tough two different sides of that. We can't fund everything with advertising if we're going to encrypt all the user data and make it so it's not useful for advertisers, or anonymize it, which is good for the consumer to be protected, but it's bad for the advertiser. You want that stream of information so you can get that perfect consumer, that the profile that they've set up. So it really
Yeah.
does seem like it's the Bitcoin that's going to allow us to make that shift away from internet advertising funding everything. It'll be more people will pay for encryption, they'll pay for security, and they'll probably pay in Bitcoin. So.
I hope so. I mean, that's the ideal world that we're moving toward.
And as we've seen just in these last few days, when Yahoo does something, Google does it too. So Google Plus, if you're looking for a way to get us to use your network instead of Facebook, accept Bitcoin. Allow people to tip in Bitcoin whenever they push the plus button. I'll bet you in a week, Facebook will be doing the same thing with their like button. And
Great.
if that's the way we have to work with this, let's work this. Let's get Google on it. Let's just compete these big industries against each other and get them on board. Because it costs them hardly anything to set up Bitcoin. Was it very difficult for your company to set up Bitcoin for your website when you first set it up?
Yes and no. So initially, we were going to use a company called Pacius, which is no longer around. It was Eric Voorhees' company, but their software didn't integrate into our shopping cart. So when I started studying Bitcoin, I became so excited that I couldn't wait. So that's when I came across BitPay, and super easy integration, great customer service. It took me as a kind of a newbie programmer something like 10 minutes tops to get it installed and integrated into our website. So yeah, it's so easy to do. I definitely think that the cost of working with Bitcoin has dropped, and I think the reverse is going to happen, where people holding dollars are going to have a higher cost for holding those dollars. And what I say is we're going to have Bitcoin is going to have hyper deflation until the dollar has hyperinflation, you know, and we've started to see that, and it looks like we're still headed in that direction.
Definitely. So it's relatively easy to set up a website with Bitcoin, and it's kind of like throwing a switch. Once the website's set up, you're pretty much set up. People come in, they pay, you take their money, you convert it to dollars if you want through BitPay. Do you guys convert your Bitcoins into dollars, or do you keep them?
Yes, we actually we keep as much as we can. We convert what we have to pay vendors. But we're pushing our vendors really hard, and they are very open to the idea. Their reservations, I think, are Bitcoin's track record. It doesn't really have that much of a track record, whereas they know gold, and they know that gold and silver has a track record of 3,000 years, so they're very comfortable with that. But they have all said they love what we do. They're keeping a very big eye on what we're doing, and so I think in the next 3 months we'll be able to start paying vendors in Bitcoin, which will help us a lot, because when we have to convert it to dollars and then send it to our vendors, it takes 5 extra business days to get it to the vendor, because it has to go through this antiquated banking system. But now we can send it directly to the vendors, so we'll have more products in stock, so we can ship more products and make more money. Essentially, the banking system is preventing us from maximizing our income.
It really does seem like it's a chicken and the egg problem with the vendors. They can't take it until they have to take it, and they don't have to take it until everyone else takes it. I know Overstock.com is having the same problem, where obviously they produce a bunch of Bitcoins, but then they need to buy more stock, and of course the company that sells them stock wants dollars.
Mm-hmm.
It seems, I don't know how to solve this problem. Maybe just brainstorming, if they would take 1% in Bitcoin, if you could get them to take some kind of a certain percentage of this order, we'll try it out, right? The rest of it we're giving you in dollars. Like, you're going to be fine, you're going to be able to pay things, but maybe just this 1% we'll give it to you in Bitcoin. And like you're saying, it takes 5 days for them to get the money. That 1% in Bitcoin would arrive instantly. Mm-hmm. And if you could do this maybe for a couple of months, this combination of payments, 1%, 99%, maybe after a couple of months they'd see how easy it is. And again, they could be converting it to cash as well. We're not saying everyone has to hold their Bitcoins. If you need cash, convert it into cash. Mm-hmm. And it's just that they should do that on their end. Then they'll get the Bitcoins faster. They'll use the transfer network as a benefit.
Yeah, I think a big thing, benefit for Overstock.com, and I don't want to make presumptions, but I would have to assume that a lot of their vendors or their vendors' vendors are international. So there would be a perfect way to explain, look, international money transfers are so much more efficient with cryptocurrency. And it doesn't even have to be more than one company. I use Ford as a great example. Ford sells cars in 112 different countries. It has plants in 32 different countries. In every single one of those countries, they must have an entire department around foreign currency exchange and the transfer of those that currency and management of that currency. But if they can convert their entire system to Bitcoin, where it can go to any of the Ford plants anywhere in the world instantly, they can displace a lot of employees, which would, I think, save them costs, which they would pass on to us. So our cars would be a lot cheaper, especially now that car parts come from all over the world.
It really does fit in with the whole globalization narrative that we've been given for the last 10, 20 years, except this globalization seems to be happening all by itself without any major external factors. No one's pushing Bitcoin to happen. It's just when people find out about it, they get interested. When business people find out about it, they get interested. Investors, each little group of technologists, anarchists, libertarians, each one of these little groups, when they find out about Bitcoin, they find this little thing that they like about it, and they get completely involved.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to matter which side that you're coming from. If you like the transfer mechanism, if you like the ability to hold wealth, if you like the ability that the government can't print money anymore, whatever side you're coming to, Bitcoin doesn't seem to care. It accepts you, and you're a part of Bitcoin, and everyone seems to be on board. So it's just getting really exciting every day.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a good term to explain pre and post blockchain. So, like BC and AD, something like that, because I think that when that was dropped into the internet, it the future is it changed the future for the better in a billion different ways, and it's going to, I think, save the lives. I mean, Bitcoin is going to save lives in people in third world countries. It's going to make us all wealthier and possibly live longer. And so I think that, yeah, I mean, it's changing in more than one way. So and I think that the point in time that it dropped into the internet should have a date, or like a label. And I don't really want to say post blockchain, because that means like after blockchain. Whereas the blockchain is here and will hopefully be here for many more years to come.
It does seem like a major break in internet history when the blockchain is invented and released by Satoshi. Even the basic idea of a shared timestamp database, where we could timestamp a document and agree that that was that document at that time, and that we could come back to it and say, well, there's been no edits to this document, it is what it is. That's an incredible, useful tool that we're barely even using yet. There's a lot of great ideas for the blockchain that haven't happened yet that will happen, and they'll be just as important as Bitcoin the money. Most people don't really even know about Bitcoin the network, or the idea that these miners are adding things to a shared ledger. And it's such a simple idea. I mean, people are going to understand if it goes -1 in my account and +1 in your account, and that needs to be added to the ledger. Like, they can all understand that, and the fact that it's such a level of complexity, hundreds of thousands of miners, hundreds of thousands of transactions all the time, but that the system can still manage it and handle it in this decentralized fashion is truly amazing.
Yeah, Thomas. So, what do you think it should be called? The point that it was dropped, onto the world.
Well, it was such a low time. The mortgage crisis going on, the elections were going on. It was kind of a nadir. It was like a low point. So it's something like Satoshi's nadir, or some kind of because there's this break where just after that point, I was talking to Tatiana Moroz yesterday, and we were talking about how bad it is to tell people about the Federal Reserve and how depressing it is when you tell them about fractional reserve banking. And you're like, well, when they deposit $100, they actually take that deposit and deposit in several other banks, and that 100 actually becomes several $100,000 of wealth out of your 100, and that they don't really hold your original 100 in any kind of reserve anymore. It's not like you can go get your money out of the bank, or your money's in Jim's house. It's really like your money's been loaned out 100 other times to many other people, and then that money's been loaned out hundreds of other times. And just the more you study it, the more you're like, I can't believe this is our system. And that used to really bum people out. There's nothing they could do. They felt powerless, this entrenched system. But now we have Bitcoin. So when you tell them about that, you give them a blanket, you give them a cup of coffee, they're back on their feet. They're ready to go, because we do have an alternative. The old money system's the old money system, and Bitcoin is the new money system. So there is hope for people now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, you brought up fractional reserve banking, and I don't think there's anything wrong with fractional reserve banking when people voluntarily do it. When you put your money, if you put your Bitcoins or your money into a bank, knowing that a bank's purpose is to make money, then they have to loan it out in some way to earn interest and hopefully pay you interest. But I do think that our Federal Reserve System, which is a monopoly, it's coercive, It has all kinds of regulations that stifle innovation. I would say that is definitely an evil entity and wrong, and that form of fractional reserve banking is wrong. But as a whole, I don't see anything immoral or wrong about it as long as it's consensual and it's not using a coercive system.
I'm not sure it's that bad. It's just there used to be more restrictions on how much of a reserve the bank actually had to hold, and that information was public. I'd just like that information to be public so that we know if a bank only holds 3% of your
Yeah.
deposits, that's an incredibly weak bank.
Oh yeah.
Under old standards, we used to know, we used to be more concerned after the Great Depression, the different collapses there, the recovery. We knew more about it, and there was also the Glass-Steagall Act to separate the banks from the investment banks, and I think that was a very good act. It was a very bad move when Congress let it fall in the early 2000s, and it directly led to the mortgage crisis because these investor banks were able to come in and take over these conservative banks. And I would agree, fractional reserve banking in the hand of a conservative bank is, probably the only way to run the system. It's the only way to continue creating wealth and to make something out of nothing, which is what the system seems to do to perpetuate itself, to continue growing as we need to grow. We all know.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Whereas the other system, when you get these investment guys come in and they say, "Hey, we can crank up the reserve, and we can loan out all this money. We don't even really need to keep a reserve. Why even bother? We can just borrow from the Fed on the overnight window." That kind of gambler's mentality took over several of these banks, and they're pretty much unrecognizable from their old selves. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would definitely call the banking system a cartel or a monopoly, and that's one of the beautiful things about Bitcoin is that there's going to be, and it's happening right now, a huge transfer of wealth from the dinosaurs, the antiquated banking system who has the power and the money. And that wealth is being transferred to these innovators, these people who see the future of money, who don't want to work within their system. Of course, my fear is, are these banksters, I like to call them banksters, going to give up without a fight? And I don't think so. So the future is bright, but we do have a lot of work ahead of us.
There'll be a fight, but again, as long as we hold the technological higher ground, I don't see how we can lose. I remember the MP3 versus the CD. Just in every way, the MP3 was superior, and that was true in 1997. It was true in 2007. And the only thing that changed is the iTunes store came along and got all of the major labels on board. The Amazon store came along, competed with the iTunes store. I'm sure Microsoft has a music store by now. There's just that level of competition. The industry had to give into it. So maybe we will be seeing some kind of Bitcoin banks, or as I've speculated, someone like eBay or PayPal might buy Coinbase. Someone like Wells Fargo might buy BitPay. Larger companies might take over these companies and then convert their banks into tech support for Bitcoin. They have the branches, they have the personnel, they have experience with security and money. They just need to transfer that into the new money. And if they do that, they'll be very wealthy. If they don't, someone else will, and they'll all go out of business. So, or they'll copycat each other at the last minute, as we've seen. This Google Yahoo thing is my new front page header for what's going to happen into the future. If we can get one company on board, the other company will change their mind within a week.
Oh, absolutely.
And it seems like it's all pre-planned, but really, they've been working on Bitcoin. Like, we know that Amazon's aware of Bitcoin. They say they don't have it, but if eBay takes it, Amazon will turn it on within a week. And we're like, how is that technically possible? And it's because they've had it ready the whole time. They're not stupid, but they are waiting for some kind of a push. And so if Yahoo gave the push to Google, and now we've got Dish TV out there pushing the DirecTV AT&T monopoly, and maybe that'll lead to Comcast, Time Warner Cable, the rest of the television providers. Like, we just have to look at these things as industries and get us a little bridgehead, and then see what happens after that. So.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really optimistic. There are we had one of our bank accounts shut down on Monday for accepting Bitcoin. The bank is not, and I urged the bank and I told them, I was on the phone with them probably for 3 or 4 days straight. I mean, I was quite happy or fine with losing our account. Not surprising. That's why we have extra bank accounts for redundancy. So it didn't really stop business or anything. But it's a small bank. It's called First Bank here in Colorado, and I urged them so much to at least do the research. If they had any questions, ask me about it, because they have so many misunderstandings about it. I was just shocked about. I mean, they were saying how dangerous it is, and you know, and then they started talking about all the benefits of Bitcoin, but they were saying that those were dangerous things or scary things. And they don't even have the risk of us accepting Bitcoin. We bear the risk, and yet they still shut down our account. So, and I think that, and this is the second time we've had a bank shut down our account for accepting Bitcoin in the last year. So, it's still a struggle.
I know that Jesse Powell of Kraken has said very much the same thing. One of the hardest things that Kraken, which is a Bitcoin exchange, is
Yeah.
having is working in multiple states with multiple rules and, of course, multiple banks. And they're perfectly legitimate. They're above board. They have large investors. They're doing their best. All those things are true. And they're still having troubles with these individual banks. And
Yep.
like you say, it's for ridiculous reasons. And what are these banks doing? They're going to be out of business here soon anyway. They may as well act as a support system to Bitcoin while there's still time. They're
Mhm.
basically shutting themselves off to the future. It's like you don't have a website, you don't do internet banking. You know, that's not acceptable anymore. Like 10 years ago, that was acceptable. You could pretend that the internet was going to go away, but it's not going away. Bitcoin's part of the internet now, and it's not going away either. So that only leaves the banks to go away.
You
So
don't think that a hammer will come down and in the next 6 months to a year to try and ban or block all Bitcoins?
it's just like the internet, where I don't like to say it, but in a way, I think the technology people, part of us hope for the hammer. We hope that they go ahead and try the same thing they did with Napster, which again, Napster was a business. They could have worked with Napster. They could have been selling music through Napster. They could have been bringing up ads telling me about concerts when I was listening to free music. They could have enticed me. They could have treated me like a customer. But
Absolutely.
instead, they smashed Napster. They treated everyone like criminals. They ruined a generation of people. They had all these stupid advertisements, all these stupid movie advertisements, all this other stuff. And what did it get them? Nothing but BitTorrent.
Yeah.
BitTorrent, this incredible file sharing system that really can't be destroyed. Napster, you could walk into their offices and shut them down. It was really easy. BitTorrent is completely impossible. So whatever they try to shut down Bitcoin, other than shutting down the entire internet, which would be a disaster for business everywhere and for communications, for everything else, it's going to fail. Like the internet sees censorship as damage, and it routes around it, and that's just what it's going to do. So, I mean, they've already pretty much made it a commodity with the IRS ruling. The FEC is saying that you can donate it to political campaigns, although through some very confusing metrics. But they're accepting it. And it's the thing where they had no choice anyway. They couldn't have said no. And if they did said no, things would have gotten a lot worse. But they said yes, and now things are going to get a lot worse for them anyway. It's just you give us any little bit of ground, and then now we're in the system. Now we've got overstock. Now eBay can't stop talking about this. It's very clear. eBay's CEO is lighting a fire under PayPal, and I'm surprised they didn't just sell off PayPal and have 2 or 3 guys just write it into the eBay code and look like geniuses. But they're going to stick with PayPal, maybe turn PayPal into a Cryptsy/Coinbase kind of a wallet for all your altcoins. Hopefully a very secure wallet, because I'd hate for them to have trouble with that. That would be really bad. But there's just so much happening with businesses and corporations coming into Bitcoin. It really is just taking off. And if they stomp on us now, we've got friends. Like last year, like we had venture capital. This year, we have actual friends with Overstock, Tiger Direct, several of these other companies. I mean, Overstock. I mean, I haven't watched most of his speeches yet, but the guy's actually politically interested in Bitcoin as well. So
Oh
he's
yeah.
not just a
Always
customer.
been a libertarian. So
Absolutely, and that's one. He's not just libertarian. He's millionaire head of a company and has weight in the system and everything. And once we have people like that on our side saying, pretty much the same thing that the technical people have been saying. Bitcoin's really exciting. You can send money around. This is a store of value. It's just so weird because when I watched the Bitcoin videos like 5 years ago, I saw them move the little numbers from account to account, and it was all command line, and it was very basic. And I was like, oh yeah, so you've moved a number from account to account, but it's like video game currency. Who's gonna believe that? Who's gonna give you money for that? Like, yes, I agree. It's very difficult to move that number from account to account, and you worked out a system. But now, 5 years later, especially after last year with the venture capital and the price spike, people are going to give you money for that Bitcoin. They are going to give you money for that number, that virtual currency. So we're pretty much over the big hurdle, which is that people thought it had no value. It clearly seems to have some value now. So I think that the sky's the limits after this. There's more and more adoption. So
yeah, value one is tricky, and it comes down to a misconception of believing that value is intrinsic, when in fact the last big person to think that was Karl Marx, and obviously he was pretty wrong on that, the labor theory of value. So as we all know, value is subjective, and it could be anything from love, which you can't touch, to software, to services, all of the things you can't touch, but they all have value.
And with Bitcoin, a lot of the things people complain about, the mining, the use of electricity, actually give it the value. Bitcoins are difficult to mine. They require a lot of electricity. And in a way, that electricity is in the Bitcoin when you buy them. That's the value.
Yeah, I don't know if that can be used to argue. I think maybe looking at the network behind Bitcoin could provide it value, but not the cost of the electricity. I don't know. I mean, I think obviously the value of Bitcoin comes from many different things. So, but yeah.
It's also mainly faith, like the fiat currency. We have faith that it has value, so it does have value. So if enough of us have faith, then that will happen again. So
Yeah.
Because that's how they do it now. They're not based on silver or gold or even electricity, because they just print those things.
Yeah, faith. I like to say that the dollar is backed by violence or coercion. If you don't accept it, then they're going to come and lock you up in jail. So, but yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about Bitcoin, is that it requires no one to be forced to accept it. It's completely voluntary, and it's taking off all on this voluntary level, and that I think is the beauty behind Bitcoin. Is the bank that shut down our account said, "Oh, it's not regulated. It's a fake currency." So I said, what do you think the dollar is? The dollar is pretty much a fake currency, and at least Bitcoin isn't regulated by politicians. It isn't affected by the whims of politicians.
Well, and we've seen how they can act recently, shutting down the government for no reason, not signing the budget, not extending the debt limit, the recklessness of the conservatives, who have been using political gamesmanship while messing with the actual economy that keeps things running. So if they can't be trusted with that, what can they be trusted with?
Yeah.
And that was previously like everyone used to work together on that. They'd be like, well, we're having a hard time working together, but we're going to go ahead and raise the credit card limit. We're not going to mess with that one. And no, not anymore. They're like, yeah, we're going to mess with that. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. So
looks like we might try to end things here. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing? Just something.
Not too much else. Like I said in the beginning, our Amagi Metals website is almost, our new website should be launched in the next few days, and that's amagimetals.com. And we'll have a lot more features, and a lot more features for the cryptocurrency community. So definitely visit the website, and hopefully you guys can use the tools on the website for your personal use.
Very cool. We can all check it out at amagimetals.com. All right, Stephen, thank you very much for being on the show. We're out of time. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having me.